Welcome to All Things Financial with Jack Driscoll. Each week, Jack takes on all things you thought were hard to understand about your finances and makes it fun, easy, but most of all interesting. From insurance to the best way to save your money and squeeze the most out of the dollars you put aside for your rainy day. And now you have a friend in the money business. Here's your host, Jack Driscoll.
Welcome back, everyone, to another edition of All Things Financial. What I wanted to talk about at this time of year is all of our vacations and the issues that we have if anything goes wrong. So things do sometimes, trips get canceled, hurricanes come up, the cruise ship runs into something, these things do happen. And the question is whether you're covered or whether you're stuck. The answer a lot of times depends on what plans you made in advance. So number one, when you go on a trip, do you have trip cancellation insurance? Was it offered to you and you didn't pick it up? And that's either for a plane or just the hotels and the cruise and all the different things you're doing on the trip. You could buy insurance in advance, and it's really cheap, that if something goes wrong, even if the hotel burnt down before you got there, that you're totally reimbursed for your expenses. So I wanted to touch on that. All of you, no matter what types of trips you're going on, make sure to get that trip cancellation insurance before you begin. Now, if you rent a car, even not for a trip or vacation, remember, I've touched on this in other shows, you need to cover yourselves so that if anything happens in that rental car, you're covered at least as well as you are if it was your own personal car. The one way to do that, we've learned in years and years and years of experience is, deny the rental car insurance that they try to sell you because your automobile policy already covers you for extending your liability and your physical damage coverage to the rental car. And that's been our advice forever. Well, about 4 or 5 years ago, it's been discovered that the rental car companies and the lease companies have changed their leases. And their leases now hold you responsible for what they call loss of use. And what that means is if your car is stolen, your rental car, 2 days later, let's say after you rent the car, and you only have the car for 3 days, so it was just a long weekend rental. If that car is stolen, the rental car company has the right in most of those lease agreements now to hold your credit card hostage. And what that means is max out your credit card for the lost rent they could have gotten for that car for the next 30 days. So by your authorizing, and you can't get a rental car without a credit card, you've actually become responsible with that lease for all of the potential expense and income the rental car company could have made over the 30 days until their insurance company settles that claim or yours does. And on a stolen car, all companies will wait over 30 days to make sure that car is not recovered. That's a huge expense. So what you need to do is check your lease agreement, the back side of it. Are you responsible for that? And if so, buy the rental coverage directly from the rental agency, including loss of use. Okay, now when we go on a trip, a lot of times we're looking at renting cars. We go down to Florida, we go out of state, we go out of the country. And each one of those circumstances are different. So we have general information if you rent a car, but we also have specific information on vacations. So we get to the point where we deal with Florida or any of the 50 states. The rules a little bit are different. Your own automobile insurance policy covers extending liability as you have on your own cars. It also covers, in most cases but not all, so you have to check your policies individually, physical damage, which is comprehensive or collision damage to the rental car if you have comprehensive and collision damage on at least one of your cars. So you have to check, because if you have all your cars as liability only, you may not have any coverage physical damage for that rental car. So you're going to want to pick up the rental car insurance. But in most cases, we're advising you pick up that insurance anyway. So when you're on vacation, check all those coverages, make sure you have the coverages you need on your own personal policy, and don't forget about limited tort versus full tort, because whatever you have is all that will apply on a rental vehicle. Okay, now we're going out of the country. We're going up to Canada and we're driving there. So we're driving our car across the border and we get to the border gate and we realize we've done two things wrong. We forgot to plan for entering Canada. Are we allowed to drive in Canada? So here are the two things, at least two, that I want you to think about. Number one, Canada requires a Canadian no-fault card. You have to get from your current insurance company a Canada no-fault card. So all you do is contact your carrier and say, we're taking a trip to Canada. I need a Canada no-fault card. They print one, send it to you. You put it in the vehicle, and you'll have a Canada no-fault card if you're in any accident up there. You'll have the proof of insurance that you need for your company to provide. Number two, you need to ask the company that you're with, do you provide coverage in Canada? Most all companies do. So that won't really be much of an issue. But the third is there have been some people that are stopped at the border and can't get through. And I don't know how they do this, but how the Canadians do this, but they check your license, and if you have any DUI on your record, they turn you away. You're not allowed in. So I know people have been caught by not knowing that. So if anything happens and anybody in the car has a DUI, you better pave the way in advance. I think there are ways to get exclusions and file forms and get exemptions, but as I understand it, it's a 2 or 3 month process. So before you take your whole family there and then get stopped at the border and have to turn back around, do all the preparation in advance to make sure their successful trip actually goes through in Canada. Some of us during this summer are actually taking trips overseas. When we take trips overseas, it might be on a tour, it might be on a cruise, or it might be a do-it-yourself. So we're going overseas, we take the air, we land, and we rent a car. That is not at all the same animal as when we do it in the States. First off, most countries' laws are different from most other countries. So even the countries outside the United States are not similar. They're actually all very unique. If we choose to rent a car, like I know in Ireland, it's been said that you can't even rent a car over age 70. So once you're over age 70, if you think you're going to rent a car over that, you actually may not be able to rent a car. When you get there, it's too late to find out. So you make the plans in advance and you make the rental car arrangements in advance. And then what a lot of people are doing is they're landing, going, renting the car and enjoying their week-long trip. Well, I am asking the people, are you covered if something happens to the rental car while you're here? Oh, sure, it's covered. Well, when you look, no, it's not usually. So the rental cars in some of these countries don't come with insurance. They don't even come with where you could buy insurance sometimes through the rental agreement. So don't trust it's like the States. Many times you have to go to an outside company and buy rental car insurance in some of these international companies. And if you try to do it then, sometimes you're unable to do it then. So don't wait until the trip. Get all that lined up in advance. The rental car insurance can sometimes be 3 or 4 times as much the daily cost of renting the car. It could be super expensive. Most people that I talked to internationally, when I traveled internationally, I asked them, did you buy the insurance? Guess what their answer was? What insurance? So I want to make sure everyone prepares their trips in advance there. Don't be like the other ones, what insurance? And find out after you hit a tree or something. I was in Ireland last summer. We did do the preparations in advance for renting a car. And I did find out that renting a car is not expensive over there, but buying insurance for renting a car is. So I contacted our insurance companies over here and asked, do you extend liability coverage and physical damage coverage like you do here? if I rent a car in the States in another state, down in Florida, let's say, do you extend my coverage to that car while I'm renting a car? The answer here is typically yes. The answer there was no, we do not. I said, why? And they said their laws are different. So we extend to certain countries, but not all countries. And Ireland is one of the countries we do not extend coverage to. So I was stuck. So I inquired about insurance, rental car insurance over there. Man, was it expensive. It was like $149 a day just for the rental car insurance. So it is horribly expensive over there. And I asked why, and they said, well, everybody wrecks them. There are a lot of wrecks and accidents over here. So I figured, oh, they must not be very careful drivers. And they said, no, we have real narrow roads, these country roads, and people run off the roads. I thought, well, I don't know. Make sure I have an automatic and not a stick, because I hear it's almost impossible to get an automatic because everyone drives sticks over there. So he said, okay, we'll get you an automatic. So I got over there and rented the car. Oh my goodness. What I did first, you should have shot me for it. They drive on the wrong side of the road. So the car, you're sitting on the wrong side of the car. So your steering wheel's on the right side, your pedals are on the right side. And if it was a manual transmission, that would have been in the center. So I'd have been shifting left-handed. Thank goodness that wasn't the case, even though I can drive a manual stick. But wait till you hear. So I'm looking to pull across traffic, pulling out of the rental agency. And I knew, look left, look right, look left, look right. But again, habits came in, and it was like on Route 51 here. And so I was looking to pull out, and I saw it was totally clear coming from the left, and it was clear from the right. So I looked back from the left again, waited till cars passed, and then pulled out, pulling right onto the far lane. And lo and behold, I am so lucky, because once I got out into that far lane going right, which again is the opposite way for us, I looked and thought, you didn't even check the right. Cars could have been coming right at you on your near lane and you didn't even check. So I thought, you could have been in an accident pulling out of the rental place. It's hard to drive over there, folks. So I get over there and I'm driving in the left lane, and I think I'm a good driver. Well, those roads, we got out of the center town and we got onto those side roads, and all of the roads are like super skinny narrow. They're 2 lanes, and these cars are flying in the opposite direction, which again is the right lane, so they're passing you on the right side. So I'm trying to hug the left side, and I'm not doing a very good job of it, I guess, because my wife's screaming at me the whole time. You're too close, you're too close. And I said, they're only hedges. I'd rather hit the hedges than hit these cars coming on. And she's screaming, and I'm driving, and it was kind of like a nightmare for like an hour and a half getting to the motel over there. So I'm driving and driving. Thank goodness I have the insurance, but I don't want to use it. So we're driving in all these hedges, and I get to the hotel, and it was closed. I hit the curb once. I mean, this was a nightmare, right? No wonder they don't let Americans drive over there, I guess. So I get to the motel, which was actually a golf resort community, and I pull in, and how was your trip? And I said, fine. And of course, my wife's hair is all frazzled, but I said, piece of cake. And so we get there and we register for the hotel, and they said, yeah, we can always tell American drivers. I never knew what that meant. I still don't know what that meant. But we can always tell American drivers, but be careful of the hedges, because they're not hedges, they're stone walls. I said, oh my goodness, you're kidding me. My wife's looking at me like furious. They're stone walls, all of them. So when you're driving in other countries, it is so much different than here. I'm so lucky I hit the curb and not these stone walls. But I'm telling you, these people that I talked to over in Ireland, we were over there for 10 days. Almost everybody I talked to that rented cars, I asked them over there, did you buy the insurance? Almost all of them said, what insurance? They had no insurance, thought their personal policies, I guess, would cover them, or the rental company, and neither will. So I'm cautioning you with my own personal experience there. And if your liability extends and if your physical damage extends, number one depends on your company. And number two depends on, did you buy the insurance? Because even if your company extends, I don't think I'd trust that coverage. And I think I'd buy the individual insurance. So there's my tip of the day for all you vacationers, especially internationally. It's dangerous to drive overseas, folks, especially in the countries with the narrow roads. London, England, Scotland, Ireland, they're going to be tough to drive on. Okay, we get into a situation now where we're actually again on vacation and we're on a trip and we're in a hotel and something goes wrong. I had this happen. We had a case where someone was, I think, steaming their suit in the hotel room. They were actually using the bathtub overseas. They were in Germany to, put hot water in and steam their coat. And he fell asleep in the room. And so what, though? I mean, the drain was open to drain the tub, and he was steaming in the bathroom to steam his coat. Well, an hour later, he gets a knock on his hotel room door that woke him up. The bathtub overflowed. All the water was going down into the floor below it. And here it was because his bathtub was on and it damaged the hotel. It was like, I don't know, $20,000 or $30,000 ultimately. So he calls us, am I covered? Am I covered? Now this is overseas. So we had to check with the company. I don't know. Are you covered overseas for stupid things you do? And are you covered even here for stupid things that you do? So what it turns out is, in most cases, that's liability insurance on your homeowner's policy at home, extending worldwide. Most companies do. Unlike the auto insurance companies, where most companies don't. So here, lo and behold, the claim is covered, thank goodness. And so we ended up, our company here, paying that whole claim to cover the hotel in Germany. But some of the other companies said we would not have paid that claim. So if you're going overseas, please check all of these things I'm bringing up on the show, because it's summertime, we're going on vacations, and we're not thinking about, all we're thinking about is what can go right and how nice it will be. No one's thinking about what if something goes wrong. So I'm putting it out on this show to help remind you that if something goes wrong, it can still go right if you plan and prepare enough in advance. Okay, everyone, we're doing fireworks. It's 4th of July time. I ran into a case. Now listen, I don't know fireworks. I don't do fireworks. I'm a pretty calm and conservative person, actually. And I had a friend over out back. And this has to be like over 10 years ago. And so he brings over some fireworks. Well, what are you going to do? Yeah, sure, let's shoot off fireworks. So we're shooting fireworks off on my deck. Now, I know better than that, but we're shooting fireworks off on my deck. And here, lo and behold, well, this is cool, so we shoot one off, we shoot another off, no problem. And about the 6th or 7th one we shoot off, goes down in a neighbor, lands in the bush, and turns the bush on fire. I'm lucky it didn't land on a house. So it didn't go out up in the air, I guess. So it lands the bush on fire. So we're all panicked. We run down to the neighbor's house, and we finally get this bush out, put the fire on. And I'm sitting there thinking, you're an idiot. And then I'm also remembering, hey, are you even covered for that stupidity clause in a homeowner's policy? Which thankfully there is one, and it's covered. So it would have been covered if they had to make a claim for that I had to replace their bush. But what if it hits a house? And I'm sitting thinking, oh man, first off, it's a stupid activity, and we know that. Secondly, what if somebody gets hurt and blows a finger off or something? Who's responsible for that? If it's at our house, did we condone it? Are we partly responsible even though the person's setting them off? So I'm here to tell you, number one, it's a hazardous activity, as you know. And number two, you do have to make sure that you have the coverages on your liability on your homeowners. It covers if you're golfing and hit someone with a golf ball, or worse, hit a golf ball out onto the road and it hits a car or gets in front of a car and they swerve away from it and cause an accident and your ball didn't even hit them. Now, I've never done any of these things, of course, but yes, I have. So if these things happen, Your homeowner's policies typically do extend to all of these different type of events. Who wants to use that coverage is a different question. We don't want to use that. We kind of want to save it for something that we really might need it for, like someone slips and falls. We don't want to use up our homeowner's coverages for frivolous things like this and then find we got canceled, our homeowner's policy canceled because we had 2 claims in a 5-year period or our rates went up for something stupid. So be careful here, folks. We don't want to use up these coverages unnecessarily. We have a situation we're running into. A lot of us are calling Uber and we're going into Uber cars. You know, a company just came out with coverage for being a passenger, or supposedly is coming out with being a passenger in an Uber vehicle. You know, I happen to think about, why do I need insurance? Seriously, why do I need a special insurance for my medical bills being a passenger in an Uber? Aren't I already covered for that? So I sat and thought about this, and I thought, okay, Uber, number one, a lot of you or some of you listening are driving for Uber now. So my first question is, are you covered? The car you're using in Uber, are you covered? Now, I know I've checked into this. I've checked into this basically and found out before you go on the clock, you're typically covered under your own car insurance because it's personal use. The minute you go on the clock, now you're sitting in your driveway at your house maybe, but you went on the clock for Uber, which means I'm now available. I'm on the clock. That minute, most auto policies stop coverage for you. So even if your car's hit while you're parked, most companies are saying, you were on the clock for Uber, therefore you were driving for Uber. That's a business pursuit, carrying people for livery is what they call it, Bailey coverage and all that type of thing. You are not covered the minute you go on that clock with Uber. And we checked with Uber and Lyft, and they were saying, well, we really don't provide coverage until they have a fare. So there's no coverage for liability and maybe not even physical damage. Ouch. So you need to figure out, you Uber drivers, first off, are you covered the minute you hit yes, go on the clock? Number two, some companies will cover Uber drivers now and your car being used for Uber, and a lot of companies still won't. So you have to know your policies. Again, most people I know that drive for Uber and Lyft, oh, we want to drive for the football game, we want to drive for this. Me, you know I'm going to ask the question, are you covered when you're driving? Oh, sure, we're covered. Do you have special coverage? No, our policy covers that. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness. So that's number one. Number two, now you have a fare and you're en route. As I understand it, don't hold me to this, I think Uber covers up to $100,000 for your liability till you pick up the passenger. I'm not sure about that, but I'm pretty sure about that. So it's limited liability coverage, I believe, while you're en route to pick up a passenger. And I think then there's $1 million liability coverage once you pick up a passenger, if I understand that correctly. So there is some Uber coverage, but there's also apparently coverage for the passenger's injuries while they're in an Uber car, which brings me back to my original question. Why does the passenger need to buy special coverage if they're hurt in an Uber car? Folks, I think I don't have the answer. I'm not even sure we want to buy that coverage or not, because most of us have medical insurance, group coverage. And that means if we have a heart attack, if we have a stroke, if we're in a car accident, if we're in a plane accident, doesn't matter, we're covered on our health insurance. So yes, we have a deductible, but would I go out and buy extra coverage for medical? I'm not so sure. So check into this before you go jumping into this. But that's how it works, and putting the pieces together pretty much on the Uber side of things. The other thing, when you're renting a car and going into a hotel room, I need you to be careful. You're using your credit card to swipe for the hotel. You're using the credit card to swipe for the rental car. You're using the credit card on Uber, and you're using the credit card for gas. All of those are common sources for theft of credit card information. All of them. If you get an Uber code sent to you on your cell phone, you better watch out, because if you didn't request that, that means somebody hacked that Uber account and taking rides on your credit card. We've seen it on hotel rooms. We've seen it on travel. We've seen it on gas cards. They're hacking credit card information, whether you have a chip or not. And we've seen it on the rental cars. So this cyber theft, especially while you're away, not the least of which our concerns are if you go internationally, someone's going to steal your purse. So we get this situation, what if it happens, especially internationally? We get hackers hacking our email address, and they're emailing back to our contact saying, hey, I'm held in Mexico, someone stole my credit cards, and I need you to wire $3,000 fast. So people are falling for that scam because they're saying, oh, they got locked up in jail and they can't call, they asked me to call you. Or what if somebody does get all of your valuables over in Ireland or Italy? Now what do? You don't have any money, and you don't have any cards, and you don't have any information. So you have to think. You have to think to protect yourself a little bit. Maybe keep some of your valuables here, some of your valuables there, some of your valuables somewhere else. Each exposure is a risk, but not all of your valuables and credit cards and information is all in one place. So think about how to protect yourself on cybersecurity while you're going away on these vacations. It's very important. Thanks again for tuning in to another edition of All Things Financial. We'll be back again next week.